Princess of the Empire stood in the center of the observation deck. The deck was massive, stretching 200 meters in all directions. Above her, the stars hung like diamonds scattered across black cloth. Below, nothing but endless void. She had stood in this same spot hundreds of times before, watching civilizations bow to her father's power. Today was different. Today she would watch something that made her feel uncertain, did not enjoy feeling uncertain. Her skin shimmered with light that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was a property of her species. They had evolved on a world with 7 moons, and their bodies had learned to absorb and reflect all types of energy. They were beautiful, powerful, and they knew it. The screen in front of her showed a small vessel approaching the flagship. It was nothing compared to the military machines that served the Empire. It looked like a tin can with engines. The registration codes identified it as human. The word meant nothing to her at first. Humans were a species discovered only 3 months ago on a planet called Earth. The reports said they were primitive, violent, desperate. Every report said they were inferior. Had dismissed the reports without reading them fully. Why should she care about a backward species on a worthless planet? Then Captain Daniel Cross had transmitted his first message to the Empire. He had not begged for mercy. He had not offered tribute. He had simply asked to speak with someone in power. His voice on the communication system was calm and clear. He did not sound afraid. That was strange. When volunteered to lead the diplomatic team, her father laughed. "Why would you bother?" Emperor N asked. "Send a subordinate. Why waste your time with insects?" Did not have a good answer. She could not explain why she wanted to look at this captain face to face. Something in his voice had caught her attention. She told her father that she wanted to understand humanity before the Empire moved to absorb them. That was reasonable. That was logical. It was also not entirely true. The human vessel docked with the station. Watched the pressure seals engage through the monitoring system. She watched the docking bridge extend and connect. She turned from the observation window and headed toward the diplomatic chamber. Her attendants followed her. There were 5 of them, all selected from the Royal Guard. They had been trained since birth to protect her, though she had never needed protection. They were strong. They were fast. They had technology that could destroy planets. What would a human do against any of that? The diplomatic chamber was designed to intimidate. The ceiling rose 30 meters overhead. The walls were made of polished stone that reflected light in complex patterns. The floor was black, so dark it looked like a hole in the universe. A table made of compressed carbon extended from one end of the chamber, sat at the head of the table. Her attendant stood behind her, motionless and silent. A door on the far end of the chamber opened. Daniel Cross walked through it. He was small. That was the first thing noticed. The human barely reached the height of her chest. His skin was pale and fragile-looking. She could see the blood vessels beneath the surface, thin lines of red and blue beneath a layer of tissue that would tear if she touched it too hard. His body was soft. No natural armor. No protection. He looked like something that should have died millions of years ago. He wore a military uniform. The material was synthetic, clean, well-maintained. His shoes were polished to a high shine. He carried himself like he belonged in this chamber, like he was not looking at creatures that could crush him with a single hand. "Princess," Daniel said. He bowed slightly from the waist. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Said nothing. She studied him, trying to understand what she was looking at. His face was distinctive. The other humans she had seen in the reports had shown some variation in appearance, but this one was different. His eyes were blue, a sharp, clear blue that was almost painful to look at. His hair was dark, cut short and neat. His face had strong bones beneath that fragile skin. He was not beautiful by standards. They understood beauty as something crystalline and gleaming. This human was rough and organic. Yet she could not stop looking at him. "Sit," said finally. It was not a request, it was a command. Daniel sat. He seemed completely calm. His breathing was steady. had expected him to sweat, to show signs of fear or stress. But there was nothing. He looked like someone sitting down to eat a meal, not like someone sitting before a being who could kill him with a thought. "The Emperor has sent me to inform you of humanity's place in the galaxy," said. "The Empire is the dominant power in this region of space. Your species has been discovered and catalogued. You will now accept the position that the Empire assigns to you." "And what position is that?" Daniel asked. "You will become a servant species," said. "Your people will work the colonial worlds. You will build what the Empire requires. You will follow our laws. In return, you will be permitted to live. This is more mercy than the Empire usually shows to primitive species." Daniel listened to all of this without moving. When she finished speaking, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "We refuse." The chamber went silent. The attendants made small sounds of shock and anger. They stepped forward but raised a hand and they stopped. She was surprised by her own reaction. She had expected him to be grateful, to accept the offer as the only option available to him. Instead, he had refused. The simple word refuse hung in the air like a weapon. "You do not have the ability to refuse," said. Her voice was sharp now, controlled but sharp. "Your fleet is insignificant. Your technology is primitive. The Empire can destroy every human settlement in a matter of hours." "You are right," Daniel said. "You are stronger than us. You have better weapons. You have a bigger fleet. But we did not come to this region of space to become slaves. We came to live as free people. We came to build something new. If you are going to kill us, then kill us. But we will not accept chains." Felt something move inside her. It was not anger. It was something else, something she could not name. This human, this fragile creature from a backward world, was refusing to submit. He was refusing to acknowledge her power, her superiority, her right to command him. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was also the most interesting thing she had encountered in her entire life. She leaned forward in her seat. Her hand rose. Her finger pointed directly at Daniel Cross. The gesture was deliberate, demanding. Every part of her motion showed ownership and control. "That human will be mine," she said. The words came from someplace deep inside her, someplace she did not know existed. "And through him, your entire species will learn obedience." Daniel looked at her hand. He looked at her face. Then he smiled. "We will see," he said simply. Felt her crystalline skin flush with heat. She had never been challenged like this before. She had never wanted to be challenged like this before. She watched Daniel stand and leave the chamber, and she realized that everything had just changed. She did not yet know how, but she knew that nothing would be the same again. The research team worked through the night cycle, sat in the data center, surrounded by screens that showed information about humanity. She had told everyone that she needed to understand the human species in order to negotiate with them. That was true. It was also not the complete truth. What she really wanted was to understand Daniel Cross. The data files on humanity were long and dense. Scientists from had begun studying the species the moment contact was made. The files contained medical reports, sociological analysis, historical records, and technological assessments. Every file confirmed what the first report said. Humans were primitive, violent, desperate. But as read deeper, she began to see something else. Something that the scientists seemed to have missed or dismissed as irrelevant. Humans came from a world called Earth. The planet was violent. The atmosphere was toxic to most forms of life. The gravity was stronger than most species evolved under. The temperature swings were extreme. The weather was dangerous. Diseases were common. Resources were scarce. Every day on Earth required humans to survive conditions that would kill most other species. And yet they had survived. They had not only survived, they had thrived. They had built civilizations. They had created art, music, literature. They had sent themselves into space. They had reached beyond their own world because something inside them demanded more than mere survival. Read about human history. She learned about war, cruelty, and suffering. The scientists highlighted these things as proof of human inferiority. Violence meant weakness. Suffering meant failure. They had evolved past such things through superior intellect and technology. But saw something different. Humans had suffered more than almost any species in the galaxy, yet they continued to reach higher. They continued to hope. They continued to create things of beauty even in the midst of horror. That was not weakness. That was strength. She found a file labeled Captain Daniel Cross, Personal History. It was unusual for individual humans to have such detailed records. They had not considered individual humans important enough for extensive study. But Daniel Cross's vessel had been the first to make contact, and someone had thought his background might be useful. Daniel had been born in North America, a region on Earth that was frequently struck by severe weather. His parents had been scientists. His father had died when Daniel was young, caught in a structural failure during a deep ocean expedition. His mother had raised him alone while continuing her research into ocean ecosystems. Daniel had joined the military space program at age 18. He had learned to pilot spacecraft, to navigate by stars and instruments, to solve problems under extreme pressure. Every mission report said the same thing: calm under stress, creative problem solving, ability to maintain team morale in difficult situations. There was a medical report from his childhood. At age 7, Daniel had developed a severe infection in his lungs. The infection had nearly killed him. He had spent 3 weeks unable to breathe properly, weak and in pain. But he had survived. The report noted that the doctors had said he had exceptional willpower for a child. Read about his training. Other pilots in his class had scored higher marks in some areas, but in the category labeled adaptability, Daniel had scored at the top. In problem solving, the highest possible rating. In mental resilience, also the highest possible rating. They valued intelligence. They valued strength. They valued the ability to follow commands and maintain order. They did not particularly value the ability to adapt, to overcome, to persist in the face of hopelessness. These were things that weak species needed to survive. The strong did not need them. Was beginning to understand that this assumption might be wrong. She requested a personal audience with Daniel. The diplomatic protocols said she should send a message through her subordinates. Instead, she went to the human vessel herself. The interior of the human ship was small and cramped compared to what was used to. The ceilings were low. The corridors were narrow. She had to duck to pass through doorways. It was like being inside a box designed for creatures much smaller than her. She found Daniel in what the humans called a workout chamber. He was exerting himself in the way humans did, moving his body against resistance, pushing his muscles to work harder and harder. Sweat covered his skin. His breathing was hard. His face showed strain. He stopped moving when he saw her. He did not show surprise. That annoyed her for some reason. "Princess," he said, "this is unexpected." "I wanted to understand your species better," said. "It was the truth, though not all of it. I have been reading your personal history." "Is that so?" Daniel said. He did not ask if she had found anything interesting. He simply waited. "You were very weak when you were a child," said. "You were sick. By standards, you should not have survived." "Many humans don't survive that kind of infection," Daniel said. "I was lucky. I had good doctors. I had people who believed I could survive. That matters." "That should not matter," said. "If something is weak, it should die. That is the natural order of the universe." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Is that what you believe?" Did not answer. She was beginning to realize that her beliefs might not be as solid as she had always thought. "Come with me," Daniel said. He led her to another chamber. The walls displayed a tactical board. He showed her a simple game using stones to represent different forces. "This is how I teach my crew to think ahead. You imagine failure. You imagine what could go wrong. Then you prepare for it." tactical team had shown her similar games, but they used them to practice victory, to imagine ways to win, not to imagine ways to fail. Your people play games designed to show how you can succeed, Daniel said. He moved the stones around the board, creating a scenario where the defending force was completely surrounded. We play games designed to show how you can survive when you cannot win. We have lived our entire existence in situations where we were outmatched. We had to learn how to survive anyway. One of her guards came to escort back to her quarters. As she walked through the narrow corridors of the human ship, she found herself thinking about Daniel's words. She thought about a child fighting to survive an infection. She thought about a species thriving on a world that wanted them dead. She thought about a captain who refused to bow to her power, and who smiled when she pointed at him like he owned him. That night in her private chamber, asked the central computer to compile all research on human biology, history, and achievement. She told the computer to cross-reference all areas where humans had succeeded despite impossible odds. The computer worked for hours. The result was a massive file, thousands of pages long. She began to read, and the more she read, the more she understood that they had made a serious mistake in their assessment of humanity. Humans were not inferior. Humans were dangerous, not because of their weapons or their fleets, but because of something more fundamental. Humans refused to die, and more than that, they refused to accept that anything was impossible. The Emperor's message arrived on a standard communication channel. It was brief and absolute. The humans had 3 cycles to accept submission to the Empire. If they refused, the Empire would seize their worlds by military force. There would be no negotiation. There would be no compromise. The matter was already decided. Received the message at the same time as everyone else. She was in her private chamber when the notification appeared. She read it once. She read it again. She understood immediately what it meant. The negotiation was over. There was nothing left to discuss. The Empire would move forward and humanity would be destroyed or enslaved. She wanted to feel nothing. That was how they were supposed to feel about the fate of inferior species. The death of primitives was not tragic. It was not even particularly important. It was simply a fact of life in the galaxy. But could not convince herself to feel that way anymore. She went directly to Daniel's quarters without announcing herself. The guards at her door asked if she needed protection. She told them to leave her alone. She did not want protection. She wanted to speak with the human captain, and she did not care what protocols had to be broken to make that happen. Daniel was studying star charts when she entered his chamber. He looked up calmly, as if he had been expecting her. Perhaps he had. Perhaps humans had some ability to sense the future, was beginning to believe humans might be capable of almost anything. "You have received the Emperor's order," Daniel said. It was not a question. "Yes," said. "You have 3 cycles to choose slavery or death. Those are your only options. The Emperor does not negotiate." "I know," Daniel said. "We received the message through our own channels. We have already begun our preparations." "You cannot fight the entire Empire," said. Her voice was harder now, more desperate. "You will lose. Every human will die. The Empire has millions of warships. You have fewer than 200. "We know the odds," Daniel said. "We have known them since the beginning. Every human knows that we are small and weak compared to most species out there. We have always known that we could be destroyed. It is the burden of being from a weak species in a strong universe." "Then why do you not simply accept?" asked. "Why do you choose death when you could choose to live?" "Because we would not really be living," Daniel said. "We would be existing as slaves, as tools for the Empire to use. My people came to this region of space to be free. Freedom is worth dying for, but slavery is not worth living for." Turned away from him, she walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Behind her, Daniel stood and waited. He did not try to comfort her. He did not try to tell her that everything would be fine. He simply stood with her in the darkness. "My father will have you killed," said quietly. Every human in the Empire will be hunted down and eliminated, and my father will ensure that I am part of the execution. He will make me watch." "And will you do as he commands?" Daniel asked. The question hung in the air between them. Had always done as the Emperor commanded. That was the way of the children obeyed their parents. Soldiers obeyed their commanders. Everyone obeyed the Emperor. Obedience was the foundation of civilization. But had learned something in these past weeks. She had learned that there were things more important than obedience. There were things more important than survival. "No," she said finally, "I will not." She turned back to face Daniel. "I will help you. I will give you access to the Imperial database. I will provide you with star charts showing the weak points in the Empire's defense. I will give you the codes that will allow your vessel to move through Imperial space without triggering alarms. I will do everything I can to help you escape." "That is treason," Daniel said. "The Empire executes traitors in ways that are not quick or clean." "I know," said, "but I cannot watch my people destroy yours. I cannot let the Empire kill billions of humans because of the Emperor's pride. I cannot live with that choice." Daniel stepped toward her. For a moment thought he might touch her. Instead, he simply looked at her. His blue eyes were deep and serious. "You understand that you cannot come back from this," he said. "You will be hunted. The Empire will never stop looking for you. You will spend the rest of your life running." "Yes," said, "I understand." "Then I accept your help," Daniel said, "and I offer you asylum. When this is over, if we survive, you will have a home with humanity. You will be one of us." The work took 30 hours. Used her access codes to move through the Imperial systems without triggering security protocols. She downloaded terabytes of data, star charts, fleet positions, defense codes, supply routes, everything a human fleet would need to escape the Empire's hunting reach. She worked in her private chamber, in rooms where the security monitoring systems had been conveniently damaged by a power surge that she had arranged. The senior officers who might have questioned her activities were all occupied with the Emperor's war preparation. By the time anyone realized what she had done, the data transfer would be complete. With 4 hours remaining until the deadline activated the final transfer sequence. The data was leaving the Imperial network, traveling through a secret relay to Daniel's vessel. In a few moments, it would be done. In a few moments, she would be a traitor to the Empire forever. She thought about her father. She thought about the palace where she had been born. She thought about the life she was throwing away. For a moment, just a moment, she considered stopping. She could erase the transfer, deny everything, go back to being a princess. Then she thought about Daniel. She thought about the humans who would die if she did nothing. She thought about a species that refused to accept chains, no matter what the cost. Her hand moved to the final authorization button. She did not hesitate. She pushed it. The transfer completed. Every alarm in the Imperial systems began to scream. Within seconds, the Emperor's guards would be on their way to her chamber. Within minutes, she would be arrested. Within hours, she would probably be executed. Stood up calmly and walked to the door. She opened it before the guards could break it down. They looked shocked to see her standing there, waiting. "I am ready," she said. "But first, I have something to tell the Emperor. I have something to tell him about his definition of loyalty and what true strength really means." As the guard seized her, felt something she had never expected to feel. She felt completely, absolutely certain that she had made the right choice. The human vessel accelerated away from the diplomatic station with 8 battleships in pursuit. Daniel sat in the captain's chair, his hands steady on the controls, his eyes calm and focused. Around him, his crew worked with the kind of coordinated efficiency that only came from extensive training and trust. Was somewhere on the lower levels, hidden in a secure chamber. She had been brought aboard mere moments before the human ship had disengaged from the docking collar. The had fired on them as they separated, and the ship's hull had taken damage. But the human vessel was moving now, and moving fast. "Get me a tactical display," Daniel ordered. His voice was quiet but clear, the way someone spoke who had given thousands of orders and knew he would be obeyed. A young human officer at the tactical console pulled up a holographic display. 8 red markers showed the positions of the ships. The human vessel was shown in blue, moving toward the jump gate at maximum speed. "They're moving to intercept at Vector 227, the officer reported. "Calculated interception in 23 minutes. "Can we make the jump gate before then?" Daniel asked. "No, sir," the officer said. "We need at least 30 minutes to reach the gate. We'll be caught in the open space between here and the portal." Daniel nodded. He had probably known this already. Humans seemed to make plans based on information, not on hope. That was something they had not expected. "Redirect power from non-essential systems," Daniel said. "I want everything going to the engines and to shields. Cut life support in Section C through E. Redirect all weapons to full power. Calculate the point where they will begin firing on us and have a counteroffensive ready." The crew moved. They did not question the order. They did not ask for explanation. They simply did what the captain commanded, watched from the observation chamber, seeing the human military in action for the first time. It was impressive, but it was also different from what the military would have done. They would have fought with superior technology, overwhelming force, and absolute confidence in victory. The humans were fighting with preparation, calculation, and the kind of cold logic that came from always having to be more efficient than their opponents. The first volley of fire came from the lead ship. Energy bolts screamed through space and impacted the human vessel's shields. The shields held. They flickered but held. "Counter fire," Daniel said. "Target their rear propulsion systems. Do not destroy their ships but make them understand the cost of pursuit." The human weapons fired. They were not as powerful as weapons, but they were accurate. A ship that had been accelerating began to slow as its propulsion system took damage. "One enemy vessel is reducing velocity," the tactical officer reported. "They are falling behind." More fire came from the other ships. Daniel's vessel rocked with the impact of multiple hits. An alarm began to sound. Daniel reached up and manually silenced it without looking. "Damage report," he said. "Starboard shields at 60%, an engineer reported. "Hull integrity compromised in Section B. We're venting atmosphere, but containment fields are holding." Daniel looked at his tactical display. The ships were moving into a pattern designed to cut off the human vessel's route to the jump gate. It was a good tactical move. It would have worked against most ships, but Daniel had already seen what they were doing. He had probably seen it before it happened. "Change course to Vector 011, Daniel ordered. "Use the ships as cover. Move into their formation, not away from it. They will not expect us to move closer." The human vessel changed direction. It moved toward the ships instead of away from them. For a moment, one of the enemy ships had to stop firing in order to avoid hitting its own allies. Daniel's ship used that moment to accelerate further, moving deeper into the formation, using the vessels as shields against the fire from the other enemy ships. "Bold," a voice said. Turned to see herself standing in the observation chamber. No, not herself, but a reflection in the viewport. She had been so focused on watching Daniel that she had not noticed herself staring at the reflection. She did not recognize the being looking back at her. This was not the princess of the empire. This was not someone who had been raised in luxury and power. This was something different. Someone who had betrayed everything and chosen to die if necessary for a cause. The human vessel emerged from the formation and accelerated toward the jump gate. The enemy ships pursued, but they were further away now, separated from their formation. Their fire was less accurate. The human ship's shields held. 20 minutes passed. The jump gate grew larger on the screen. Could see its massive structure now, ancient and powerful and beautiful in a way that the sleek technology of the could never match. 10 minutes to gate, the tactical officer said. 3 enemy vessels have given up pursuit, 5 continuing on intercept course. Daniel did something that seemed crazy. He ordered the human vessel to slow down. The crew did not question the order but could see the confusion on their faces. Why would they slow down when escape was within reach? The 5 ships moved closer. They were closing in for a final attack, ready to destroy the human vessel before it could reach the gate. "Now," Daniel said quietly, "fire all weapons, but do not target the ships. Target the space directly in front of them. Create an obstacle field." The human weapons fired, but not at the enemy ships. Instead, they fired at empty space, creating a field of debris and energy disturbance. The ships moved into it without hesitation. They could have stopped, could have gone around, but they did not. They plowed forward, determined to catch the humans. And they were slowed. Not much, but enough. It was exactly what Daniel had known would happen. The humans had bought themselves time by understanding how they would think and what they would do. 5 minutes to gate, the officer said. The ships continued to close. They fired again. More hits on the human ship. More damage reports. More sections of the vessel falling into silence as their life support was cut off. 2 minutes to gate. Daniel reached out and touched a symbol on his armrest. A recording began to play. It was his voice, calm and steady. "To the Empire," the message said, "we have defeated your pursuit. We have escaped your space. We have shown that primitive humans can overcome your superior technology through intelligence, preparation, and the willingness to sacrifice. We do not seek war with you, but we will not be slaves. If you pursue us further, we will defend ourselves. You have shown us that you value dominance and power, but we have shown you that power alone is not enough. Remember that. Remember that a human killed 8 of your people simply by thinking faster than you did." 1 minute to gate. The human vessel accelerated again. The jump gate was massive and bright now, filling the entire forward view screen. The 5 ships were still closing, still firing, still trying to destroy the humans before they escaped. "Impact in 30 seconds, the tactical officer called. "They are going to reach us before we cross the threshold." Daniel did not move. His hands remained steady on the controls. His face remained calm. The human vessel crossed the threshold of the jump gate. Reality twisted. Space folded. For a moment, saw things that her mind could not process, could not understand. Colors that did not exist. Shapes that had too many dimensions. Then everything went white. And then they were somewhere else. A section of space that was empty and quiet. Behind them, the jump gate was already closing, its threshold collapsing as the human ship's passage destabilized it. The ships could not follow. They appeared for just a moment on the other side of the gate, and then the portal sealed completely. The human vessel was free. 3 cycles had passed since the human vessel had crossed through the jump gate. The ship had moved deeper into unknown space, away from the Empire, away from the places where sensors might track them. Daniel had used the time to repair the damage from the pursuit, to check the weapons systems, to ensure his crew was rested and fed and ready for whatever came next. Now the ship approached Earth. The planet hung in the darkness like a blue jewel, rotating slowly beneath clouds and weather patterns that would seem chaotic to any species but humanity. Stood on the observation deck and looked at it. She had spent 3 cycles reading about Earth. She had studied the biology of the humans who lived there, the cultures they had developed, the history of a species that had overcome catastrophes that would have destroyed any other civilization. But seeing it with her own eyes was different. It was alive in a way that no data file could capture. Daniel entered the observation chamber silently. He had a way of moving that announced his presence without making noise. That was another thing that made him remarkable. Humans had learned to be silent because they needed to hunt prey on Earth. They had learned to move without being noticed because predators hunted them. "Welcome home," he said. "This is not my home," said. But even as she spoke, she realized the statement was no longer true. The empire would never accept her again. The palace where she had been born was closed to her. Her family had declared her dead, as was the custom for traitors. She had no home in the place where she had been raised. "It can be," Daniel said, "if you want it to be." Turned to look at him. 3 cycles of close proximity had only made her less able to understand him. The more she learned about Daniel Cross, the more she realized there was still so much more to discover. His kindness was not weakness. His refusal to use absolute force was not timidity. His willingness to show mercy to enemies was not cowardice. These were not the traits of a primitive species. These were the traits of something exceptional. "What will happen to me?" asked. "I have betrayed the most powerful government in this region of space. I have handed over military secrets. I have helped you escape. Surely your people will see me as a security threat." "Some will," Daniel admitted. "There will be people who want you arrested or returned to the empire as a gesture of peace. There will be politicians who see you as a problem that needs to be solved. That is the way of all governments, even human ones." "Then why did you help me?" asked. "Why did you not simply erase me once you no longer needed the information I had stolen?" "Because I gave you my word," Daniel said. "I told you that when this was over, if we survived, you would have a home with humanity. A human keeps his word. That is more than just a rule or a law. It is part of what makes us human." They stood in silence for a long moment. Thought about the empire, about the being she had been before she met Daniel Cross. That being would have found this conversation impossible to understand. The idea of honoring a promise to an alien, to a traitor, to someone who had once been a member of her family's greatest rivals, would have seemed like madness. But she was not that being anymore. "I want to see it," said. "I want to see your world, not from up here but down there. I want to understand what made you into this." Daniel smiled. It was a small smile, but it reached his eyes. "Then we will go down to the surface. I will show you my world. I will show you the places that have made humans what we are, and then you can decide if you want to stay." The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, watched as the blue of the sky intensified, as the clouds grew closer, as the planet revealed itself to her. The landing site was in the region Daniel came from, a place called North America. The ground was covered with a material called forest, an organized chaos of plant life that seemed to grow according to no logical system. The temperature was warm. The air was thick with moisture. Could smell things she had no names for, sensed that the olfactory system was not designed to process. Her skin flickered with nervous light. Daniel led her across the landscape. They walked for what seemed like a long time. Behind them, the human settlement where the shuttle had landed fell away. Ahead, the only landmarks were natural structures, trees and hills, and a river that ran with water that seemed to move according to whim and flow. "This is where I was born," Daniel said finally. They stood on a hill overlooking a vast stretch of forest and river. "Not this exact spot, but close. My mother brought me here when I was young. She wanted me to understand something about being human." "What is that?" asked. "That our world does not care about our pride," Daniel said. "It does not care about our plans or our governments or our status. It simply continues on. The forest will grow whether humans cut it down or leave it alone. The river will flow whether we build dams or let it run free. The sun will rise and set. Weather will come. Creatures will live and die. And through it all, humans have to keep moving forward. We have to adapt. We have to survive. We have to find meaning and purpose in something larger than ourselves." Looked out at the vast landscape. That was beautiful, but it was ordered and controlled. Everything served a purpose. Everything had its place. This world was beautiful in a different way, a wild way that seemed almost dangerous. "I do not think I can stay here," said quietly. "I cannot live in this chaos. I was raised to understand order, control, certainty." "I know," Daniel said. "That is why I am offering you something different. You do not have to live in the forest. You do not have to give up the things that make you comfortable. but you will need to understand that not everything can be controlled. Not everything is certain, and that is not a weakness. That is just the way of existence. Was quiet for a long time. She thought about everything she had given up. She thought about the life she could have had, the crown she might have worn, the power she had abandoned. She thought about the choice she had made to help Daniel, knowing it would cost her everything. "I will stay," she said finally, "not because I understand your world, but because I trust you and because I want to learn." Daniel reached out his hand. For a moment, thought about the physical difference between them, about the fragility of human bones and skin. Then she reached out and grasped his hand gently. His skin was warm and soft and alive in a way that the crystalline structure of her own body could never be. They stood together on the hill, looking out at the wild landscape. The sun was beginning to set, creating colors in the sky that seemed impossible. Realized she had never seen colors change like this before. They had no such phenomenon. "Tell me about your world," she said. "Tell me everything." Daniel began to speak. He spoke about the rain and the wind. He spoke about the animals that lived in the forest, and the plants that fed humans and the humans that had learned to live in balance with the world around them. He spoke about art and music, and the stories that humans told to make sense of their existence. He spoke about sacrifice and courage and the value of life. Listened. She was still not certain this was the right choice. She was still not certain she could truly become human, but she was certain about one thing. She was certain that she had made the only choice that mattered, the choice to stand with someone she believed in, the choice to reject power for the sake of principle, the choice to see value in something beyond herself. That night she slept under the stars for the first time. The sky was full of them, bright and countless and infinite. And for the first time since she had pointed at Daniel Cross and declared him hers, understood that the truth was different. She was not his to own, and he was not hers to claim. Instead, they belonged together, choosing each other freely day after day. That was what made them human. That was what made them free.